All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. So excited that y'all took time out of your December. I think if you're like me, Trevor, we are planning, we are finishing up the year. December is always a crazy time between the two US holidays. So thanks for taking the time. Excited to talk about the new LLM search game, talk about AEO, GEO, and all that. And we'll do introductions in just a second. But to get things started, let's do a little icebreaker here. Let us know where you're from, and then also add in what's your current hyperfixation, something that you are maybe obsessed about right now that is causing you to lose sleep in a good way. Trevor, you got anything that you're super focused on right now?
Yeah, this one's actually really easy, and I'm not like a smart home person, I promise. But I moved to
Says the smart home person.
I know. So let me tell you about smart homes. But I moved to an apartment in New York City. If anybody has ever tried to do that, windows can be challenging sometimes. So I like our space, but we don't have a ton of windows. So I've got obsessed with these hue bulbs in which you could like change all the colors and saturations and stuff like that. And like we sync it with music. My daughter loves it. It makes it fun. So like that's kind of my new fixation. I think I'm on the tail end though. I think I'm moving out of that pretty soon.
Nice. I like that. I think like getting away from the bright white light is good.
Yeah.
Blue light is no good, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What
Yeah,
about you?
mine's probably NBA box scores. I just feel like I'm checking those obsessively, and I wish I had like other space in my head for things not like plus minus scores and that sort of thing.
Sure.
Um, we've got some good ones in the chat here. I saw somebody obsessed with agentic workflows. Well, you're definitely in the right place. NFC tags. What are NFC tags? Am I out of the loop, Leah? You'll have to comment and let us know. Nice. These are great. All right. Well, let's keep it moving. We got a lot of stuff to get through today. A little housekeeping. You can access the recording of this webinar from the URL you are at. We also email you afterwards with the recording, so no worries. This whole thing is being recorded. The second, y'all are in the chat tab right now. Right next to it should be the questions tab. That's the best place to ask questions as we go and build a catalog for us to go through. We're going to carve out the last 20 minutes to specifically go through those. But we will be looking through the chat and engaging with you. And then if you have any technical issues, best thing to do, hard refresh in your browser. And if you're really having trouble still, switch over to Chrome. Livestorm works best with Chrome. Oh, Tim, I'm a gunner as well. So let's go. I love it. Nice. Okay. We'll keep it moving. A couple intros. I'm Ryan. I'm a longtime product marketer and brand marketer. Been at Zapier for 3.5 years. Have run both those teams in that time. And now I kind of look after our AI transformation programs. And I live in San Francisco. Trevor, how about you?
Cool. Yeah. Hey, so good to meet you all. Trevor, based in New York, as you know, with my nice light bulbs. Run product marketing, brand, and partner marketing here at Profound. We're a small but mighty team, so a lot of us wear many hats. Been with the company for about 6 months, and yeah, it's been quite fun. I can, as a lot of you all can imagine, quite an evolution in the space. Something changes every week if we're lucky.
Awesome. Yeah, super excited to chat today. Yes, I think Claire was asked, Julie, you were asking this. We will send a copy of the presentation as well in the email afterwards. Nice. Well, let's get into it. A high level question just to get started. And Trevor has a really awesome story to answer this one. But for those hearing the terms AEO and GEO for the first time, what are they, Trevor? What's behind them?
Yeah. I always like to just use an analogy here. This is how my brain works, and this kind of just gets into what Profound does really quickly. So, like, think about traditional search, right? It used to be two-sided. Folks are supplying things, you're going out and looking, you're kind of going to a market and shopping and hunting around for things. That's, what you're doing every day. You're discovering, you're interpreting, you're consuming, going through those blue links, adding some cognitive load, and just trying to understand and make sense of your query and what's happening. Are you finding what you were looking for? The thing is, something's changed. Like, humans no longer need to visit these storefronts or these websites. The internet's talking back to us for the first time. And this is just a kind of big inflection point in the evolution of technology. So instead of like going through that list of blue links, users can kick back, ask ChatGPT, and just kind of get like what they were looking for served up on a platter. because they're triggering this user agent to go out and browse on their behalf. These agents are going out to the market on behalf of what the user wants. Agents can look through, they can decide which ingredients, and then they go and build this answer and kind of make it a lot more ready-made than it's been in the past for humans. And each one of these is a completely new piece of content. It's novel, it's new, it's using citations, it's mentioning brands, it's using the corpus of the internet, but it's generating that new content. So in this old marketplace, you wouldn't visit the brand directly. You, as a store merchant, had complete control of everything. Now, things are changed. Like, agents have kind of disintermediated this experience and this connection that we used to have with our customers. We all feel this as marketers. And eventually, there could be a world in which the consumer will only interact with an answer engine for specific queries, shopping, things like that. Depends kind of on the context of the decision. And the user agent is the main visitor of websites as opposed to humans. So us as marketers now think like, geez, how do we re-architect some of our content? How do we think about brand, our products? Like, how do we reach this new audience of agents? And we need to learn to connect with these agents to then connect with our customers. And this essentially is just answer engine optimization. I think that that's the simplest way to think about it. And Profound, what we do, we've been in this space for a while. When I say a while, I mean we're about a year-old company, but have
in
fun.
AI terms, that's like
Yeah. Feels like a while. Have some fun funding from Kleiner and Sequoia, and have been growing pretty quickly. But yeah, what we do is we have data that allows us to understand what are people asking of AI. What are they looking for? Are they looking for new running shoes, new jackets? Are they looking for new software, new automation software? Help you understand for those topics that you care about. How are you showing up in responses? Are you being cited, mentioned, etc.? Identify your gaps, build content and automations to help close some of those gaps, and then measure our ROI back. So that's really what we do in a nutshell, and kind of what AEO is in a nutshell.
Super cool. Well, that brings us to our next spot, and I think what we'll spend most of today talking about, which is this means, right, all of our little helpful agents going out into the market is becoming something that's happening a lot more, and starting to rewrite brand visibility, right? So like, what is changing for marketers right now and looking into next year?
Yeah. So I think what I mentioned is like those user agents are going out on our behalf, but it's kind of like, what does this adoption look like? I think it's varied for marketers. Like, right? Like, I don't think that marketers all of a sudden their organic traffic is just absolutely dropping off a cliff. It's all AI referrals, or it's all AI, specific agents. Like, there's going to be a blend, but what we are seeing is just a rapid adoption of these answer engines. In terms of like user growth, nobody's ever seen anything like ChatGPT. If you think about previous inflection points like social, mobile, things like that, this is way faster. So it means that this is going to become a super important distribution channel. And I think on this, like, what's really changed is like the funnel is completely different. For whatever reason, this is maybe more of like a human psychology thing. We have high trust with these answer engines. And what used to take a lot of clicks and a lot of traffic for brands to go through this evaluation criteria on the left of problem, solution, evaluation, etc., has really compressed into like 2 to 4 hours, maybe. Sometimes it could just be 8 turns in a conversation, and somebody feels like they have their like set of technologies or products that they want to go and evaluate. And oftentimes we're not necessarily questioning what's coming as a result of this answer engine. Like, we're believing it. So this marketing funnel has become really compressed.
Right. I think from Zapier, I'll share a couple things right now just to show what we're seeing on this side. And this is something that's put together by our team internally that's leading our GEO efforts. And I think the invisibility I'll speak to in a second, which is a funny way they're setting expectations for us. But I think what we're seeing is AI search is growing. It's started at nothing. It's up to 4% in a couple months. And the really fascinating part is the intent, and the conversion is 4x higher from AI search. And so if that continues to grow, this is the paradigm shift that you're talking about. And we're trying to figure that out. So these are a couple slides that I thought were instructive of how new this is, and some of that invisibility that you're talking about, Trevor, which is like our GEO team is trying to say, hey, we're going to try lots of things, but this is a super new area and we don't know up from down yet. We don't have great reporting just yet. We're really figuring this out, but we're going to keep trying things until we have, real best practices or kind of know what we're doing here. And maybe this is most illustrated by a chart that Janine, who will hop on in a little later, sent me yesterday, which is you can see just the growth of AI search for us and results across our blog in purple, our website in orange, app directory in blue. And you can see it's growing, right? So that's cool. That's super interesting. Then you can see these spikes and these drops, and the team is trying to make sense of like, okay, what's happening here? Anybody in the chat want to guess what's happening at each of the orange arrows? Nice. First answer, nailed it. Yep, model updates, right? And so those things are something that are coming in and just like you're trucking along, figuring things out, and then things change, right? And so much of what that team is doing is just trying to figure out how to be consistent as those models are changing not only what content it goes to find, but the volume as well. So super interesting stuff. So speaking of ranking, Trevor, like what does it mean to rank for answer engines?
Yeah, I think if we go to this next slide. Oh yeah, thank you, Ryan. Well, and even going back to what the chart for kind of like the referral traffic you were seeing, I think that's like going to be fairly standard. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how like that organic traffic just like splits out in general, because there's just going to be a lot more zero-click decisioning happening. Whereas in the past, the funnel was kind of going and looking at different pieces of content, different pieces of the website, or whatever collateral like content plan you'd have for a customer journey. And now that's all kind of happening with an answer engine. So like you said, you get lower volume, high intent leads and folks coming to the site. So it's going to be different for marketers. I think in terms of like the way that we look at answer engine optimization and what it means to rank is our customers and we are typically thinking about these 4 things: mentions, citations, referral, sentiment. And I think this actually is kind of like a maturity curve that you'd fall here. So initially it's about mentions. Like, am I being mentioned when there's a topic that I care about is being prompted or asked about in AI? Am I being mentioned? Like that's kind of the baseline. Then when the answer engine is forming its opinion and forming that answer, is my content one of the items that's being cited and kind of being the source of truth for that answer? That's also very, very important. And then you're starting to get into, okay, I've been mentioned, so that's like almost an impression, right? I'm being cited. Is that leading to referrals? Like, yes, I want to track that. Even if we know that like folks aren't necessarily always clicking to the website right away, you're still definitely wanting to track referrals. And then I think like a second order thing is tracking sentiment, where you're not just understanding like where you're being mentioned versus your competitors, but a little more so like about my brand specifically. What are the positive and negative perceptions of it kind of across the internet and in the way that AI forms its perceptions, so that I can go and combat that even from a content perspective, even from sometimes like a sales enablement perspective. This is really important for like brand and PR teams to understand just kind of like the sentiment around their brand or products. Yeah, and I think another one, and this is, so one thing that we have at Profound is Ryan had mentioned, the whole industry is moving really, really fast. It's changing all the time. So we do suggest experimentation. We do suggest learning together because things will always change. But we do have a dedicated in-house research team that uses our kind of corpus of data to help us understand what is happening and add some explanation to it. So what's really interesting about LLMs is, I think in the days of SEO is first page or nothing for the most part, right?
Right.
LLMs are looking at the long tail for the most part. They're looking down all of those search results pages and kind of looking at some of the content that's maybe not getting the highest traffic, but has good quality or is pointedly answering a question. So it's looking at a lot more of the data versus a human who kind of has like natural fatigue, where they're going to click through 1, 2, 3, 4 pages at the top, and then maybe they're not finding what they're looking for. So I just think it's interesting to see how like LLM attention is different than like human attention in this regard. Yeah, and then kind of the other one here is in terms of like overlap, like what does it mean to rank? Like, I think we're clear here, and we always like to say like good SEO foundations will lead to good AEO. but that doesn't mean that there's 100% of the coverage,
Right.
right? There's kind of like a 39%, and it was 19 just a few months ago, of overlap in terms of like the queries that stem from a particular prompt and how those result to the search result pages. So pretty much like the overlap between AEO and SEO. So it means that there's this like potential alpha, at least as of now, of 61%, in which you can take traditional SEO practices that are working, add on AEO practices, as well as some experimentation, and then just have a really good visibility program overall. So I think that's how we think about like ranking for Google, which is very important, and answer engines.
Yeah, and I like that point a lot too, Trevor, because I think like also just from a capabilities, from a behavior perspective as a team, there's going to be a lot of overlap, and these kind of shifts are just going to challenge the health of your ability to do that as a marketing team or a performance marketing team, which is like, do we experiment regularly, right?
Yeah.
Do we ship fast? Do we try things and know how to analyze results? Even do we have good taste as a team of what we put out there? Like those things are going to get challenged, but those skills are so relevant, whether you're, SEO or GEO, right? Those things are the same, and maybe they'll look a little bit different, but it's a lot of the same underlying skills too, right?
Yeah, completely agree.
Nice. Well, let's talk about this. There's a lot unknown. What are some of the early misconceptions here? Maybe some of the myths that are developing.
Yeah, we definitely could have gone on for a little while in this section, and I know we've got some really good like submitted questions as well that we'll get into the back half, which are some of these, but I'll just go through a couple of the top ones. AEO is just SEO. We definitely see that as a myth. I think that there is overlap. I think that there is like foundational work that will translate into AEO, and I believe that our research shows that. But we still see that with some of these like really important relationships. And I was talking with my data science team, and they're like, "Can you explain this?" And I was like, "I think well enough. Like, I don't know what an R squared is, but pretty much what this graph is saying is that traditional SEO metrics like referring domains, total backlinks, and authority scores are relatively weak, like anywhere from 4 to 7% predictors of citations if your content is being cited through AEO. So that means that there's kind of this like 96, 93% of, well, what else is out there? What else is important? Because these things used to make up a relatively large portion of what was ranking in the search results page. So if we go to the next slide, I'll click. There's another 93 that those three metrics don't fully explain. And a lot of this is related to content, expertise, freshness. And what we can see here is like, if it was completely related, all of these dots would be scattered along this line. What it just means is there's a ton of variability in what is causing citations, and not all of it is bundled into those three previous metrics. A lot of it is in this content, expertise, and freshness, which are a little bit broader in nature. And then the other one I'd say is like, you should just create more content. That's not necessarily an answer as well. I think that you can kind of hear that sometimes, or if you're talking about content generation, you start to think quantity over quality. And I just don't think that that's going to be the case. As AI and answer engines get smarter in general, they're going to start to perceive more like humans. They're going to start to get more multimodal. They're going to start to be able to interpret JavaScript even better, imagery, right? So like we're going to have to start really focusing or continuing to focus on quality if we want our visibility to stay good. And I think this is just like a very pointed example of why more longer content isn't just better, because answer engines, before deciding if to cite a page, are actually just looking at 4 really, really small things to understand if they should go in and explore more. So what you're really doing is making sure that the URL is semantic, the title is of quality, the description is of quality, and the snippet and the text trunk that the citation bot is pulling from makes sense, and then it will go and cite the rest of the page. So I think like continuing to focus on quality and quality in your metadata is going to lead to visibility gains.
Right, and maybe the thing here is these models are going to get, like humans, are going to be equally good at identifying slop, right, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree.
Yeah, there's a good question here too. I'm curious if you have a perspective. I see Sartaj and Nick answering as well. Like, how fresh is fresh in terms of content? As folks probably have a lot of great content already, how should they think about maybe updating things more regularly?
Yeah, and I think I've got a slide on that I'll touch on, but typically about like if your content I think is less than 13 weeks old, there's a 50% chance higher rate that it's cited. So constant and continual optimization is going to be really important. But I think that like 13 weeks mark or maybe like a quarter is a good way to think about ensuring that all of your content is optimized and fresh.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's keep going. I think something folks I know are curious about are, what are some experiments that folks are running, particularly profound customers, I think are going to be, out in front, really pushing the frontier here. So what are they observing and learning?
Yeah, that's what I'm excited to hear from your team in a bit. So I'm a product marketer. I love case studies. I love value. I love ROI. You love it too, I'm sure, Ryan. But I tried to pull from kind of just like the most like out there and like really interesting experiments. And one of the teams that I think does great marketing, a lot of folks would agree, and was one of our first customers, a company called Ramp. Their VP of growth, George, who's based here in New York, came and spoke at our Zero Click conference and talked about this really cool thing that they're doing called Ramp Rate. And effectively what they came to us and said was like, hey, we have this proprietary data and we want to do something. We don't really know what it is, but we want to use it to create virality, to create traffic. They're a very like experimental forward company. So they're like, from Profound standpoint, can you help us measure the before and after in those new AEO metrics? And can you help us with some of the content optimization and content structure if we go and create pages based around this content or this data? So think of it, what they wanted to do was like a Zestimate, but for B2B vendors. So finance pros or CFOs are like, how much is this thing? Or are there alternatives for this contract that's on my desk that seems really expensive? Like, are there other tools I should be considering? How do they kind of create like answers around some of those questions and then just show up from a brand level and a traffic standpoint? So just an example, like here's the Profound page of their Ramp Rate project, which they did. So they used all this proprietary spin data that they have to programmatically generate all of these very fresh pages, which have like charts and graphs of competitive alternatives. Are people adopting this? What are they spending on these particular tools? And these are showing up really well in Answer Engine. So this is just kind of like one of the graphs that's on their Ramp Rate pages for Profound in specific. And I think the three takeaways that George had, which I think is really good here, is like, at the end of the day, this thing works. Like they deployed all these pages and they had previous Ramp Rate pages that they worked with before they were AEO optimized. What they saw with this new like fresh content, new structure was an 80% lift in citations. They saw session growth of about 150%. So they were proving utility here and continued to build this out and have continued to build it. So pretty much their takeaways from this experiment was use fresh proprietary data if you have it, name the metric, label things, make it very clear for the bots to understand what they're looking at and interpret it, and then create a feedback mechanism so that you can understand which citations are working, get the structure from those citations, and then build that into the next optimization layer of those pages.
I love that. Ramp is just a super sharp company on a bunch of fronts, and I reference them all the time for folks on the call that are maybe less familiar. Just a really great company to keep an eye on because whether it's GEO and the example Trevor just tried or just mentioned, or head over to their website or watch their brand, they do some really creative, cool stuff, and it's definitely interesting to see them.
Yeah,
here.
It could be AEO like strategic pages, or it could be putting Kevin in the office from a box.
Yes.
24 hours. Either way works for traffic. So
Totally.
Yeah. And then the other one, and I know you've got an example to walk through, which is cool, is commerce. I don't know if anybody here is in retail or e-commerce here. I come from like kind of a retail heavy background, so this is super interesting to me. You may start noticing that when you're asking questions to answer engines, like product recommendations are just showing up. Like we actually have some pretty funny research that it's like, if you're talking about relationship problems, like 40% of times you get a product recommendation, which is not great, but it means that these things are built for commerce. They're built for shopping, and that's kind of like where they're going. So what we did is we analyzed about 1,800 PDPs and sent prompts out to understand which were the most visible and the least visible PDPs. And then what were the structural PDPs, meaning product description page, sorry, where you'd see like a shoe or a jacket or something like that. And then what were the most visible characteristics and the least visible characteristics. And we learned that like FAQs, videos, product ratings, and like title length were driving visibility through the roof. So for us and some retailers and e-commerce folks out there, this is really interesting. So I just wanted to like share this data because I just think it's interesting, and it's an experiment we were running internally to understand how commerce works in AI. But yeah.
That's super cool. Do you think that's because like some of that stuff you mentioned is more structured and it's just easier to grasp for the LLM?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that video has become quite important as well. And we're seeing a lot of video, especially on like retail e-commerce pages.
Right.
And then FAQs are like pretty much the way answer engines think. What's the question? What's the answer? So like that makes sense that that's going to be super important for product descriptions.
Right. There's a question in the Q&A right now. Maybe we'll hit it with Nick and Janine together, but is kind of essentially speaking to that is the best way mentioned to just answer questions. So I think maybe the short answer might be yes, at least for right
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Nice. I'll hit a couple Zapier ones. These are things we've been testing in 2025, and I'm excited to have Janine on in a little bit as well to maybe talk about her favorite ones. But as we think about areas where we've focused our effort, it's been in a brand perception column, it's been in a topic leadership column, and then it's also been in this effort around pricing. And I'll pick one from each one. I think to your point, like competitor pages and competitor information has been really important, because what do people do in LLMs? They're like, well, tell me the best AI automation or AI orchestration tool, right? Or tell me the difference between X, Y, and Z, right? So having that information is something that we really need to invest in from a content perspective. And that was always true, but I think often like competitor content just kind of like falls to the bottom of the list as a product marketer at times, right? Topic leadership. Oh, Janine, you popped on. Maybe you want to hit one or two here.
I just figured if you want me to, I can.
Yeah, please.
I mean, one of the things that I really like were these competitor articles that you were just talking about. I think that it gave us an opportunity to experiment with longer form positioning for against competitors versus sometimes a competitor landing page is really super tight copy. And I know like I'm somebody who wants to maybe learn a little bit more about something if I'm evaluating between two options. So a blog post that didn't have that same kind of landing page design and space constraint gave us the opportunity to really tell our story in a different way, especially because Zapier's been kind of repositioning in the last year or two. So that gave us a new surface for that kind of thing. And we were really pleased with the way that they performed. So we're continuing to work on those kinds of things. Another one that I really was excited about for us was some content syndication in that topic leadership, where this is really just like giving us an opportunity to get some of our best content, most important content out in new places, potentially reaching audiences that we wouldn't have the ability to reach. So that was an experiment that we experiment, not in the traditional sense of like we are testing a thing and evaluating for data, but just like something new we were trying to see whether we thought it was valuable or not. Those are sort of the two.
When you say new places, Janine, what do you mean exactly?
So the content syndication that we're working with is an outlet called Stacker. And they work a lot with radio stations, TV stations, and like traditional news publishers, as well as large online news publishers. I think AOL is part of their network. It's been a while since I've looked at the data with them. But when we submit certain types of stories, anybody within their network can pick it up and can run the full story that we've written and put together. So we put something, I think one of the pieces that we put out there was on like how to bring AI into your business. And so that's an area that Zapier knows an awful lot about, putting that out on the business section of dozens and dozens and dozens of local news or like news public publishers, gives us the ability to hit local markets that might not be looking to us for those kinds of things. Stacker is the syndication outlet that we're working with.
Cool.
I saw that question in the chat.
Yeah, maybe I'll hit one that's I think probably everyone's thinking about is pricing as well. Like pricing is right, it's perception of value. And so LLMs are essentially taking a huge sets of information and then summarizing perception. I think for us, we're constantly working with our pricing and packaging. We're constantly updating it. Zapier is 12 years old, so there's a lot of reviews about our pricing. And so as we've improved that and offered more value over time, it's kind of like, well, how do you get that into the LLMs? How do you get that new packaging into the LLMs? And that's been a big focus for us as well, so that, when there's competitive breakdowns because of a search in an LLM, there's really clear value positioning around it. And I think also trying to put pricing apples to apples. We're a consumption-based pricing model. A lot of automation providers are, and that's actually very confusing for people to understand at times. And so how do you actually put it apples to apples across the board? And that's something we're working on too, that I think is pretty interesting. Sweet. I think I'll stop there unless any other ones you want to hit, Janine.
I don't think so. I wish I knew more about our Reddit strategy, because that's getting a lot of questions in the chat, but that's just an area that I haven't been as involved in. So no, I don't have anything else right now.
Cool. We'll bring it back in just a little bit.
Sounds good.
Great. Well, I think you're going to cover a couple of these, Trevor, but folks want silver bullets, but maybe just some inside secrets on what are the early best practices, or these are signals, right? In a lot of ways, what's intriguing that's been happening this year.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the questions we got were kind of in relation to this. So I think I also have a special guest. So along with Janine, we can hit those here in a sec. But I know folks are getting this deck, so I just want to kind of include these just as it's a helpful reference or anything if you want to screenshot. So not so secret, Reddit continues to be one of the #1 cited sources in AI search. And I think that's because, or I know that's because it's just AI is forming perspective, and it's looking for perspective to help it form perspective, because that just makes it simpler for it. It's not necessarily, as far as we know, right, forming its own net new thoughts. It's operating off an existing corpus. So when people are opinionated and there's turns in a conversation, it can easily process that information very quickly. So brands can sometimes surface these goldmine Reddit threads that they didn't even know existed, in which they're being mentioned alongside their competitors. They can go and have a thoughtful comment. You have to be careful about the way that you approach this. You have to add value to the community, but it's going to allow you to have pretty massive visibility lift pretty quickly. So yeah, Reddit, if you're not investing in this as a social strategy, start doing it now, or start thinking about it now. Next one, and I think I mentioned this, freshness, super important. Content is that's less than 13 weeks old is mentioned a ton, is cited a lot. And this is you're pretty used to seeing this, right? Best restaurants of 2025, this winter's best ski resorts, et cetera. It makes sense. People want that. And oftentimes queries are having that time-bound parameter of where should I go now? What are the best shoes to buy today? What deals are happening on Black Friday, right? So it's there's these kind of time-bound queries that are happening with prompts. So AI is definitely rewarding content that has that freshness associated with it, both from an update perspective and in what you're including in the description of the URL, in terms of is this actually a seasonal thing? Is it a yearly thing, etc. Another one, I think I actually already hit this one, but just in terms of there's only a few pieces of information that the answer engine is using to determine if your content is worth the citation. So what this means is you're marketing your pages to the bots, and these are kind of your 4 billboards that you have. So I think that this is the way that you need to consider it.
Nice.
And one really important one there is just natural language URLs. If your URL, if you look at it and just kind of looks like keyword soup, it's not really going to perform that well. So URLs that you can kind of read or make sense when you read it as a human is going to also work well for answer engines. And we see that these natural language URLs get a decent lift in citations.
Yeah, I mean, 11.4 is a big lift ultimately, right? And for such a simple action at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot, you can, so this is a lot of work, but there's also content optimization folks, ourselves included, that will help you kind of take your existing structure of your page and generate optimized content pretty quickly.
Cool.
Don't invest in YouTube. I think maybe a month ago, there was a change where all of a sudden YouTube just started like really shooting up in citations, and especially as like Google and Google AI overviews and Gemini start to become really good and quite, comparative with ChatGPT, that their corpus of YouTube data is going to become really, really important to them. So this has been a top-cited source, will continue to be a more cited source. So like low lift wins here is, this webinar, after it's done, make sure that it's on YouTube, make sure that the transcript is clear, make sure that there's a good description and a good title that's semantically understood. So just go and look at your existing content as a marketer and make sure that it's distributed in the right channels, one of those being YouTube. Anything on that? Yeah, anything on that, Ryan?
No, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like folks are asking, should we invest here? And I think the answer is like, yes, and it depends. It depends on your team. It depends on, how much effort you can put into it. And I think with something new like this, the challenge is always going to be, we've got to do all these new things in these channels that we weren't invested in before. And that is true unless you can't do it well, right? Or that is true unless you can't invest the focus to nail one of the channels and actually figure out the best practices as you go. So I think that's something important for folks that I would advise is like, it's not that you have to do Reddit and YouTube and all these things at once. It's more set some sort of time horizon, focus on a channel, figure out how to find some repeatable success there, and then go on to the next channel once you do, or your team scales, or et cetera. I don't know. Do you have any other advice on that, Trevor?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I mean, I think there's a crawl, walk, run approach, and I think we have a slide on that and some of the user submitted questions that both myself and our head of growth, Nick, can speak to, because obviously, like, we're optimizing for AEO as well, of course, here at Profound. So a lot of it just starts with optimization of existing content, and then automations that you can build to make that process easier. Like if you can build little utilities, and I'll kind of explain how we do that.
Cool.
This is kind of a wrap up of a lot of those things I mentioned. This will be included in the deck, but I think this is getting into like kind of what you're hinting at, Ryan, is like, what is the way that you're using AI? We just have a quick one here. Like, just because we're both mutual customers, like this is the way that we're using Zapier internally. As I mentioned, we're a 1-year-old startup who's grown quite quickly. So everything is super organized and clean, and we don't need any support from automation. It's not true. We're kind of strung together with Zapier in a lot of regards. Yeah. And then on the Profound side, like we have a content automation tool in which you can kind of build this series of steps. And one of them that we use is this FAQ generator. This is super low lift. When we saw that FAQs were like rifling up in terms of visibility, we went through all of our blogs, all of our content, and ensured that there was FAQs on the page. As simple as that, right? So I think these are just some like ways that we use Profound on Profound, and then of course how we use Zapier.
Cool. Well, let's get into the AMA. Y'all submitted a lot of questions, which is awesome. We're going to spend the next 20 going through. I'm going to be mindful of the ones y'all pre-submitted, and then we have a ton in the Q&A. So I also want to kind of skip and get there. But let's bring Janine and Nick on to help us answer a couple of these. And the first one from Andrew, which I thought was hilarious, is how do I win the new LLM search game? And I think the TLDR here is there is no silver bullet, like we were just talking. There's lots of things to go try. But maybe, Janine, what's one thing you're really focused on to win the LLM search game?
I still have a really, really strong belief that quality content is what's going to be really important. And when I say quality, I mean like quality for people, as well structured for LLMs and search engines and all of that stuff that's going to feed into the technical aspects of being able to scrape it and deliver it where people are asking for it. But without that opinionated, authoritative, well-informed, researched primary source, it's not going to drive value.
How about you, Nick?
Sorry, I had to join late. I missed the initial question.
Oh, you're good. This is one thing that you think of when it comes to winning the LLM search game.
Yeah, I think speed. I think speed and velocity is a really underrated way to consider winning the LLM search game. And what I mean by that is LLMs, answer engines, can pick up content in 2 days. Like I've personally published content and then used our platform to see ChatGPT start to cite it in 2 days. And so you imagine like the scale of this, of I think smaller companies, challenger brands can really go up against incumbents and like larger companies and win based on speed and velocity of shipping. What that doesn't mean is just like publish 1,000 pieces of content, like there's nuance here. But if you can publish high quality pieces faster, I think you have an edge.
I love that you said that, because you probably didn't hear, as Janine was giving her answer, is all about quality content. And so the goal, right, is blending those two ultimately, like figuring out how you can build the systems and the team to deliver quality and speed, right? Let's keep it moving. Maybe the first thing to start on here, because I think lots of folks are, should I do this? Should I do that? But like maybe a general sense of where's the first place to go for folks.
Yeah, I could take this one, and it's funny because like Janine and Nick are definitely the practitioners here, but I mean, I think in terms of the first place, it's content optimization. Start with what you have.
Yeah.
To Janine's point, like, and Nick's, going and just creating a bunch of content without kind of like focus or direction or knowing what you want to do is not going to really result in anything fruitful. Assuming that your content has been created with like keyword clusters and topics in mind that you want to go and win, those are going to relate to topics and prompts that you'd want to track in the answer engine world. So just go and make sure that those are available and crawlable for answer engines. I think that's where you start, and you can do that quick, and you can ensure that they're fresh. And I think that you're going to see notable gains pretty much right away.
Totally. And maybe one, I'll go jump to a slide, but one thing I'll push to folks is Profound will do a free AEO report for folks. So let me just push that out. But anything you want to mention here, Trevor and Nick, on how this works?
No, I think this is cool. So a lot of our customers asked, like, I'm not maybe ready for something like a Profound, but how do I just get started to understand like what my baseline is? I mean, we have plans for all different people, but sometimes you just want a baseline to see where you're at, how you're performing. So we worked with our product team to effectively, you enter in your domain and a blog post, and we will do like a full site crawl and kind of understand your position, how you stack up against competitors, generate a list of prompts for you, some citations, and just kind of give you an understanding of like, what could this type of data look like in the world of AEO, and give it to you in a nice dynamic report that you can share. So just wanted to make sure everybody had access to that. It's just, easy to go use and generate a report.
Cool. And maybe one thing I'm going to skip this slide. We'll leave it in the deck, Trevor. But one thing I'll say about content engine optimization, and Janine, correct me if I'm wrong anything, but all these models weight different content platforms differently. Where you see Zapier, that is like our branded content or our blog content. But all it's to say is like it is worth optimizing your existing content, because that is getting referenced, that is getting picked up, that is getting summarized and inferred. And so universally, that's a great place to start if you're already a company or a team with great performant content already. How do you make it perform for the LLMs ultimately?
Yeah, I think another thing to remember though is like this changes. I'm pretty sure we put that slide together like 2 or 3 months ago, and
yeah.
I believe that is completely different today based on what I was looking at just like last week.
Okay.
I wanted to there's been a question that some folks have put into the chat around content quality, and I just wanted to kind of follow up on that really quickly, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so some people were asking about like AI generated content and whether that can be quality content. And my answer to that is going to be a really giant, it depends. And I think that it's because quality content is quality content. So if you can work with an AI model to get it to generate something that is quality, following like it's presenting accurate information, it's got information gain for people, it's meeting their needs, like then sure. We find that it's a lot easier to get quality content out of an AI model if you are giving it proprietary information to use as your knowledge source. So like if nobody else has that information, we're going to get unique data. We've got people on our content team who are really, really good at helping to get AI engines to write close-ish, like as close as possible to our brand voice and tone, things like that. So it's just a lot of tinkering and figuring it out and finding what works for you and what lands well for your audience. So yeah, it's a tricky one, but it's a fun challenge.
Yeah, just
go
to
for it. Go for it, and I'll jump ahead to a question.
Yeah, like when we're thinking about our customers who are wanting to do content generation using Profound, it all starts from like their corpus of citation data and the topics that they're tracking and understanding to understand like what is the context of the mentions, the visibility score, the sentiment, the citations, and generate a structure of content on that. And we actually suggest just starting with a brief and then looping in like the human writer to add in a lot of craft. Maybe you can generate it and do some significant editing and things like that. But I think that if you're just pressing a button, generating content, shipping it right to your CMS, you're losing a lot of craft and quality. And I think that answer engines will pick up on that eventually. I mean, models will continue to improve, but we always suggest human in the loop for content generation. Maybe a little less optimization because that could be a bit more structurally minded, but definitely for generation.
Let's
I've definitely AI pretty
go for it,
to
Janine.
generate like FAQs. So if we have an article that's well researched and human written, we can feed that as a proprietary source into something and be like, give me the here's the FAQs. And we can sometimes be like, these are 3 that we know we want to hit. What else are we missing? Those kinds of things that are iterative. I love using AI for that kind of thing, but like it's helpful and speeds us up. But the full thing.
Totally agree. And the distribution channels around it. So like, for example, with our 0-click talks, we had transcripts of all those. We used Profound to generate like the YouTube description, a LinkedIn post, like the X article, things like that, wrote the blog alongside it. So it's like that metadata and a lot of those like different channel specific permutations of the message that you've already defined and are happy with can really speed up the workflow too.
Yeah. Danielle, you're kind of asking the question we're talking about right now, but maybe to just summarize, I think it's like, yeah, slicing and dicing your already performant content into other formats or prioritized for other channels is a great flywheel to invest in ultimately, because you know what works and now you're just going to put it in other channels. Like you said, Janine, before, like get this work into different places. And that might require cutting an awesome blog post and just cut that up into FAQs. And now you have 2 awesome assets that might show up, but it's got the same message, same content.
Yeah. And on this one, I would say visibility score. If there's prompts that you care about, are you being mentioned? And then competitive share of voice. If you're being mentioned, who else is being mentioned and what position are you being mentioned in? And then is your content being cited? I think those are like, there's a lot, but I think if you do those and some sentiment, you've got like kind of a good base coverage and you can start to trend that data because as Janine mentioned, it will shift all the time.
Let's hit this question, and I'm going to look through the Q&A as well. But we mentioned a few different metrics. You had kind of the 4 buckets earlier, Trevor, but maybe is there like a metric that folks should be focused on, or Janine, that you're really focused on from your lens of content that you're really focused on?
I think we have a slide on that too.
Yeah, and these are ones that we've kind of named here at Zapier. I wonder which ones have changed, Janine, because I'm pulling from a little bit of an older all hands that we did, but I'd be curious what's really top of mind for you.
Yeah, I pay a little bit. So I just to kind of let folks know what I do. I work on the content marketing team for Zapier, and I provide a lot of strategy and analysis support. So I am looking at how our content performs across a bunch of different channels and watching for signals on what's successful and what's not, and and looking for ways that we can improve performance of the things that do really well and also improve stuff that's maybe not hitting the mark quite where we want it to be. In terms of things like these LLM influence metrics, I care slightly less about visibility for content marketing copy, just because what we are trying to do is inform, like we have a lot of best apps on our website, or we have articles about how to automate a specific app using Zapier. The volume of query in the public for some of those things is going to be really different. So the number of people looking for the best AI image generator is very different than the number of people looking for the best automations for a Slack user. So we don't expect to see visibility equal across those kinds of topics. But I tend to look a lot at like actual traffic, referred in traffic from LLMs to understand whether or not the people we're getting then are doing the things we want them to do within those articles. Are they moving toward conversion? Are they increasing their usage of our product? Stuff like that. When it comes to things like thought leadership and topics that we want to compete well against other folks, share of voice, citation share become a lot more important. And then the sentiment is super helpful with brand positioning. So how are other people talking about us and how are LLMs referencing us? So if we see somebody talking about, like, if we are seeing sentiment drop for Zapier in some way, like we want to figure out why that might be. Or if we're seeing it improve, we're like, ooh, who's talking about us in the right way? So that we can understand what we can amplify and what we can maybe combat in some ways with our own efforts.
Right. Yeah, the sentiment's so interesting, right? Because it's how it's created, and it is very informative and instructive of how the information is going to be presented. And it's a tricky one because it's subtle, but has a huge impact to the reader when they're looking through the response that they got.
Yeah. And then that report I shared, it does a mini sentiment analysis too, which as a product marketer, you're always like been putting messaging into the world for years, and it's always interesting to see just something come back.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this. We got 8 minutes left. I do want to shift over to Q&A in the panel there. I'm going to put a question up on stage first, and I'm going to direct it to you, Nick, because I really like your answer here. Let's see if I can push this. How do I start the answer? I'll read it out loud. It's at the top of the list. Someone's basically saying, I'm in a niche. It seems like large language models surface big firm voices before mine, unless the queries are really, really specific. How do I boost my visibility and citations and compete with bigger players? How do I stand out if maybe I don't have the resources or just the default reach that they have?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, I mean, this is what I was saying earlier about even smaller players can compete on speed in really any industry. And so the base recommendation I give folks is to figure out what prompts you want to show up for and like spend a bit more time on those than you think is possible. Ideally, you speak to customers or prospects in your niche who have found you via ChatGPT and ask them what prompts they used. Or alternatively, you just ask people like, hey, if you were to try and find my business on ChatGPT, what would you type in? And like spend a good amount of time on that. And then I think from there, you can just like plug it into ChatGPT every day, start tracking what pages are being cited and kind of look for patterns, see what pages are cited most often. And then go understand, okay, why is this page cited so often? What does that content look like? What's the structure? Are there headings, tables, formatting, whatever? And then use that to kind of build an understanding of what ChatGPT likes to see right now. And then that kind of gives you the roadmap of like, you know what good looks like, and then what your current status quo is, and then like how do you like bridge the gap? Basically, is like my like base recommendation without like saying go buy Profound, which is kind of like the shortcut.
I do like that you're offering the scrappy version, which is just like go put yourself in the seat of your potential prospect and prompt and see how you would get there, and that you can reverse engineer it from there. Another question here that I think was just important that we touched on a little bit, but someone is asking, besides like blog update date or like blog publish date, is there other ways to choreograph freshness than just like making a small tweak to a blog to get a better published date?
Yeah, I'm actually curious on Janine's take on this.
I am too.
What constitutes an updated post?
Oh, that's a terrible question. I think like for me, I probably have like a higher standard for this than most people do, but like I would consider it to be like an actual update to a post if you are fundamentally changing something that's like inherent to the article. So like if you're rewriting the entire introduction and touching nothing else just to get different keywords in there, like sure, you can change your update date, but like I wouldn't consider that to be a really high quality update. And I think one of the things that's going to be interesting to see with LLMs in particular is because they are like, I know that they're kind of researching that like top little snippet bit, but at some point they're going to be able to retain a record of whatever it was that they crawled when they looked at it the last time. And if it says like, ooh, it's new, and then they compare how much is on the page and it's like 5 words are different, like my guess is that's going to start to depress your performance incredibly quickly. So I feel like there's so many like challenges to say what it is, but I tend to feel like if you're changing the fundamental purpose of the article or really revamping all of the content to make sure that you're hitting the right new points for whatever your topic is, that's what I consider to be an update. Well, and Philip, it's more than just sprinkling changes throughout. Like if I just want to go through and use like a thesaurus and be like, well, I don't want to use the word like content, I'm going to use copy. Like if I make that change, that doesn't change the intent of my article. But if I have an article that's completely focused on like strategies to ideate a blog article, and it was an article that maybe I haven't updated in 4 years. And so the like 3 main points and reasons that I'm missing AI, I'm maybe missing certain types of like search strategies or competitive analysis, or I'm missing 5 of the most popular new tools that you can use to do this work. If I go through and my main headings are the same, but underneath them, I'm including 3 new topics, that feels like a fresh update to me, even if the intent of the article isn't any different.
I like that. Janine, one question I have, are there any articles that were surfaced in LLMs that were surprising? Like we have so much content, we really do.
Oh man.
And so like, was there like one that was like, oh, that's interesting, that came out of seemingly nowhere, it was not a highly performant post?
No, I'm going to say no, but part of the reason that I say no to that right now is that I haven't gone as far into our long tail as I have with like search for some of those things. I have a ton of stories about things that would pop off in search and social at random intervals from like a couple of years back, but I haven't seen anything really surprising yet. Though we also like using AI for research of like on topics is so new. I would expect that places that are not like Zapier probably are seeing this kind of thing come up. When I worked in the news industry, for example, we would see really, really strong search performance around like celestial events. So if there was an eclipse coming up or a meteor shower, like all of a sudden everybody wants to know like, where's the best place in my town to watch the Perseid meteor shower?
Yep.
So like, and there are places that probably have those things from 5 years ago that haven't updated them, that haven't been keeping those things up to date. Like my guess is that all of a sudden you'll start to see that kind of thing bouncing around. It's a little bit more challenging for someone who's not as like keyed in on timeliness as we are. But yeah, that's what I would expect to see with some of those.
Cool. Let's do one more, and then I want to give folks a couple other opportunities to have some other things to go learn about. I think this is a good one to end on. We did talk a little bit about time. Nick, you mentioned just like speed in terms of like actually seeing results. This is maybe on a little bit larger level, but like what time horizon should folks, if they invest in this area generally, might they see some results?
Before you answer, Nick, I just want to say goodbye, everybody. I've got to drop to head off to something else. So have a great time.
Thanks for joining, Janine.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
I'll take this one. And so like, again, personally, I've seen LLMs pick up my content I have written and published at Profound in 2 days. And so I say that's like the minimum amount of time. We have a whole host of case studies on the Profound website where we have customers who have seen significant visibility and citation share increases in 1 to 2 weeks. And so I think like the takeaway there is that things happen and can shift a lot faster in LLMs than folks are used to in Google land. And I think this cuts both ways. You can increase fast, and then we've seen Reddit just absolutely drop out of the index for a couple of weeks too. And so I think being able to stay on top of these trends and volatile swings in the industry is like actually quite important.
Cool. Yeah, Courtney in the chat is even saying, within less than 24 hours. So it can be very, very fast. Yeah. Very cool. Well, we are at the top of the hour. I did want to share a couple things with folks that are still on the call. I think the first one is that Trevor can offer a free access to Profound's Ultimate Guide to AEO. So if you really liked some of the things you hear, we'll share the deck, but there's more information here. So definitely connect with Trevor, and he can follow up with that. The next one is we have a booklet here for marketers with a bunch of different, this is Zapier use cases. So for Zaps and workflows that we've collected, there's at least 10 to 15 templates in here. So if you kind of wanted some places to start as a marketer, these are not necessarily AEO, GEO related, but some of them are content related in general. And then the last two before we close out, we have a small group community called the AI Leaders Lab. There's a certain requirement that you got to be leading an AI initiative to take part, but you can nominate your boss. Thanks, Leah, for promoting. That helps me out. You can nominate your boss or someone that you know on your team that is leading an AI initiative. And then the last one, building an AI agent with Zapier. There is a workshop next week, 60 minutes. If you want to attack meetings in 2026, this agent is helping you with prep. So go take a look at that. Otherwise, I wanted to wrap up. I want to thank Trevor and Nick so much for joining us. Thank you guys both. Anything you want to say before we close out?
No, just appreciate it. Like you said, it's moving fast, so stay on top. We published some great research on LinkedIn. Nick does, Josh Bliscoe from our team, our CEO. So yeah, we just try to share as much as possible about what we know and just be as upfront as possible. So it's going to be a fun few years as marketing evolves and shifts.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. Thanks everybody for taking the time, and we will follow up with recording and slides and some assets and all that. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks a ton.
Cool. See you, everybody.